you would have a guy up a ladder 2 stories high, right?
Yeah.
With no straps or anything. And that's fine until he falls off. And the minute he falls off, someone's like, oh, actually, that's a bit of a bad idea. Maybe we should, and then they start bringing in all the health and safety.
Right, so what you're saying is at some point...
Someone's probably been licking a plug, being like, oh, what's that do? And then Hi, guys.
Hi.
There we go. Today, we're going to be joining Lawrence from Lost in a Pond. Kinda.
Kinda?
Well, we're not literally joining him, are we?
Okay.
But yeah. So we're going to be looking at 4 ways British and American houses are different.
What we know so far is that a lot of the American houses are built on a wood frame.
Okay.
I think. Whereas for the majority, at least, or on average, I would say that's normal.
Okay.
Whereas in the UK, I think our houses are built mostly of brick.
Okay.
That's what I know.
I might be wrong. I'm just going to wait and see, because if we start making these, these
it's
points
just what
now,
I know. I might be wrong, so I'll be educated. But this is what I so far seem to have in the back of my head.
Yeah, I think you're probably right to an extent, but let's have a look and see. We would like to look into more about American property, or real estate, as you guys call it, just to see what's around, and also maybe like what you can get for your money.
I think I was going to say that. I think
I'd be quite curious.
I seem to know that you would get a bit more.
Yeah,
or a lot more in some areas.
Because you see some of these American houses, and they're like ginormous, and you think, "Blooming hell! Like I can get all that for a lot less." Or for the same, because some of these houses you see, it's like very extravagant, and it's like 15. Well, no, that's a bit extreme.
Yeah,
5 bedrooms, a driveway, a garage,
3 bathrooms,
garage, and it's like very affordable. But if you would have that in like UK,
here it would just be millions.
Yeah,
at least 2-3 million.
I don't understand how, but it could be like the wooden frames. Anyway, we're going way off on tangent. Let's just
find out.
Reel it back in, and let's begin.
And tea drinkers that we are, we love our kettles, don't we? But they're not just any kettles. These are ones you plug in and then hit the switch to turn on the plug, because I forgot to mention that our plug sockets also have switches.
Okay, I'm so confused already. What?
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to houses, the things we live inside. If you're watching this video, it's quite likely you're either inside a house right now, or you're near one, because otherwise you wouldn't probably have internet access quite as easily. To anyone that might be new to this channel, come on in, get yourself a cup of tea. This isn't a genuine offer to come into my house. I'm just saying, join the channel, this is good. And hello to everybody who's been here a long time. Today we're going to look at several ways in which British and American houses are very, very different. Having lived in the United States for over 11 years, I've lived in my fair share of houses here, just as I did in Britain. So I think I have a decent grasp of how houses work.
For a while, then.
Even tiny ones like this one, which is about 400 square feet. I'm joking, this is a professional studio. Don't question me. And so without further ado, let's take a look at 4 ways that British and American houses are very, very different.
I'm curious the style.
Neither Britain nor America is devoid of variety when it comes to their housing styles, and that's because, well, with each sort of passing phase of history comes new designs to meet new needs and just new style preferences. And because of this variety, I'm not going to cover every single one of them, because that would keep us all here until next Wednesday, which would be good for my metrics, but not good for your sanity. So let's take a look at how some of the housing styles do vary from country to country. In Britain, a lot of the distinctive styles are also tied up with the period in which they were built. So you could go all the way back to the Tudor period, and you do find Tudor housing dotted around here and there. In fact, if you go to the city of York, for example, there's quite a lot of sort of Tudor buildings there. They're quite ornate with wood paneling, and they're the sort of place that you might imagine that Shakespeare lived. But wood is less indicative of British houses than you would see in America, where wood is actually quite a common material for building houses. In Britain, from about the Georgian period onward, you're going to see quite a lot of brickwork. Georgian period houses absolutely exist. People live in them, but they tend to be these opulent-looking houses that have notable pops of white rectangle, which are just the windows. It's very nice. They look like dolls' houses that you should live in. But then come the Victorian age, we started moving toward these sort of like orangey brick buildings, right? And a lot of them were terraced houses, which is what Americans would call row houses. And they just look very industrial, right? You could imagine a chimney sweep going up and getting his face covered in soot. And then we move into the Edwardian period, where houses are sort of similar to those of the Victorian age. They're just lighter colours with more chimney sweeps, if Mary Poppins is anything to go by. Now, during World War II, when the Nazis bombed the ever-loving crap out of us, a lot of the houses went boom. And then after World War II, there was a housing boom. And you started to see a build-up of new, more simple houses, kind of like the one I grew up in. Now, that's a castle. That didn't happen. But I grew up in something more like this. That's
a very standard British house.
Despite what fairy tales may suggest, most of us have never lived in a chocolate box house, but those do exist. A chocolate box house is the kind of house you might see in the Cotswolds, right? It's very quaint looking, it's got thatch roofing, and it looks like this. And if, like me, you're wondering why it's called a chocolate box house, yet it doesn't look edible, it goes back to the 1950s/60s when chocolate boxes would have on their facade a kind of depiction of a beautiful English countryside, and these types of houses would often feature on said box. Now again, this is by no means an entire repository of British houses. Neither is the following an entire repository of American houses. It's just the more common ones that you will see when you are here. So Cape Cod houses, you know these types of houses, right? They're the ones with the wood paneling down the side. And I said a moment ago that, you know, America makes good use of wood in this country because there's just so much of it. So many woodlands around the country, and it's a huge country from which to pull that resource. So they do, and it's cheap. But funnily enough, the Cape Cod style has its history with English settlers who came here in the 17th century and started building Cape Cod style houses in New England. Now, during the post-World War II period, partly to provide, you know, housing to veterans coming back from war, there was a revival of Cape Cod style housing, and it started to be built not just in New England, but all along the East Coast and in the Midwest, and even out west. Anybody that's seen the Goonies.
You showed a picture.
That was that not a different stuff?
No, that's the one that he's talking about. I was so confused by your question.
Oh god.
We're still on that.
Oops. I thought he was talking about something else.
Oh, sorry.
New England, but all along the East Coast and in the Midwest, and even out west. Anybody that's seen the Goonies will know that. And it was this style of housing that I first moved into when I moved to the United States. And I've got to say, even despite the Midwest winters, it was really warm. You know, you'd think it would be quite drafty because of all of the gaps in the wood. You could go to specific streets or neighborhoods or areas of the United States and only find these houses for miles and miles. So I lived in one of those, but my grandparents-in-law lived in what is known as a ranch-style house. And these are sort of really low-down buildings, don't typically have 2 floors to them. And once again, these houses became popular after World War II. There was just generally a big sort of boom after World War II, again in the United States in that regard. The 20th century, though, did see more and more revivalism of old styles. So you had, you know, mock Tudor, or should I say,
I quite like that show.
Which more or less replicated the kind of Tudor buildings that you would see in England with some differences. And I've seen those types of buildings in Boston, for example. I've also seen them in Indiana. As well as that, the 20th century saw colonial revivalism, though most people don't live in those houses.
Prefer the previous one to that style.
Piano, I'll think about it. And so that's an extremely basic and rudimentary breakdown of some of the different styles that you'll see in each country. But there's one big difference between all of the houses in both countries, and it's this.
The size.
Let's face it, it's time to face up to some home truths. Compared to America, Britain is microscopic. The United States is absolutely massive and needs to be stopped. And the same is true of each country's average house size. Right, so in the United States, houses just tend to be way more spacious. And we're not just talking about millionaire houses here. We're talking about your...
We was kind of touching on this, though, in the intro, wasn't we? How, like, you just seem to get bigger houses
for your money.
And I guess that could be down to, you know, wood being just a cheaper resource in America, so it's a lot more cost effective in terms of building, so it brings the whole cost down, maybe.
I don't know, maybe.
I mean, obviously, I don't know what he's going to touch on, but my only concern with having a completely wooden framed house, especially in America, is somewhere that has all of these, you know, tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes. It just feels like the house is destined to fall down, doesn't it? I mean, you know, you probably could say the same about bricks because at least wood's got movement in it, whereas bricks are kind of very rigid.
I
If you start vibrating bricks, they're all going to
for
fall apart.
earthquakes.
Yeah. Obviously, a tornado might, it's wind, isn't it? It's just wind. So maybe bricks would be better against a tornado, but I think against an earthquake would be better.
I don't know.
But, you see in some of these, natural disasters, it's like the whole street is just gone. It's just wiped out. It's just like there was just a plot now where there used to be a house. And I wonder if like a brick built house would have any more chance against that sort of. Obviously, I know it's more expensive, but
maybe
if you don't have to rebuild your house every 5 years, it'd be quite handy, wouldn't it?
Well, you think that you never have to rebuild your house because no one builds their house knowing or thinking,
I suppose you
a
don't
tornado's going to come one day, so I might as well build it of something that I can easily rebuild.
I know what you're saying, but you would probably do background checks of the area, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, there have been some tornadoes or it's prone to earthquakes. Let's adapt and build accordingly. Now, I'm assuming they probably do, right? But we're just going off the kind of wood versus brick building and probably getting a bit carried away. So let's jump back into the video.
Average house. So the average size of an American single-family home is approximately 1,600 square feet. In the UK, we're looking at an average of about 900 square feet. So why the difference?
That's
well, one
a big
reason
difference.
is population density. In Britain, we're all a bit packed together. Actually, that partially accounts for why everything is smaller in Britain. Not everything, not the Cubs. But in America, there's just so much land, and relative to that land, so few people. So, make them as large as you want, and they do. They're huge. But also, a large majority of American houses are relatively new, meaning that they were able to benefit from, building methods and materials that other countries like Britain were not. And the post-war expansion of American highways meant that this was enhanced even more. Those materials could be moved around the country more easily, and of course, this ushered in a more grand housing development. Now, all size aside, try saying that after 10 tepid tequilas, things become subtly different once you're inside the houses of either country.
The gadget.
Is gadgets the right word? I don't know. I'll have to fire my graphics to
Erica's
Either way,
have
we're
some really
essentially
cool
talking
stuff,
about accessories, the things you have in your house that make that house work, even when you're doing the house work. So, for example, airflow, right? America's bigger on its overhead fans and air conditioning units. We don't usually use those. I mean, we like to punish ourselves, especially in the...
It is true, actually, though, isn't it? In England, air conditioning is rare.
It's rare.
Not many countries. Not many houses have it at all.
No.
Obviously, offices have it.
Yeah.
And
offices and
malls
establishments
and, like that,
restaurants and
general houses.
Commercial properties have it.
Yeah.
But households don't tend to have
Not
it
really.
as a general.
I think it's becoming a little bit more popular now.
Yeah.
Especially with the summers being that bit more
getting a bit warmer. Yeah. We recently purchased something as well.
Yeah, we have like an indoor kind of plug-in one, don't we? But
what do you mean an indoor? Of course it's indoor.
Well, so normally an aircon unit is on the exterior of a house, and then obviously it comes in. But ours is just a standalone unit. It's
like a wheelie thing that you move from room to room.
Yeah,
I mean, hose out a window.
The problem we have in the UK is we're not really, by most standards, we're not a particularly warm country.
No, so
but when it does get warm here,
it's humid.
We can't handle it because we're just a bunch of weaklings, right? And there's no airflow. It's like, the sun comes out and the air just, it's gone.
There's no breeze.
It's just left.
And it's also rather humid. So like 30 degrees feels like 38 because there's no air, there's no flow, it's humid. So people laugh that, it's a heat wave in the UK with 32 degrees, but actually, based on average, it would be. And also, like I said, we're just not used to it. We're not equipped for it either.
And if you see this milky white complexion, I am not dealing with sun, okay? Anyhow, let's jump back into the video. That's
what aircon that is.
That is the aircon, yeah.
Summer, but we can crack a window open and it doesn't get oppressively hot always, and so we've mostly been fine with this situation. It does mean that insects get in, so daddy longlegs will get in the house and mosquitoes, but it's a small price to pay for not having air conditioning. I actually quite like air conditioning now that I've lived in the US. Speaking of insects, you also don't see in Britain those insect screens that you put in the windows, hence why they're getting in. In America, they're virtually in every house, but then again, you know, in Britain, we don't have black widows or brown recluses or the types of mosquitoes that make your face go like this. So I can see why it's justified. I mean, you still get ants, or is that just me? Not sure how they get in, maybe cracks in the wall, or maybe through the plug sockets. The plug sockets, of course, are different in both countries too. In Britain, you have the three-pronged outlets, and in America, you sometimes have three, but occasionally two, and they're smaller in America than they are in Britain. That's one of the few things about which you can say that. Separate taps, of course, for hot and cold water. Americans combine them all into one. Where's the logic in that? I'm joking. And while we're on the subject of sinks, most British sinks...
To be fair, that isn't necessarily a thing. I think you can have them separate.
You can, but you can also see it often enough where the taps are separate, like in older buildings.
Yeah, I think I would say it's more of an old school thing. Like these days, everyone has a mixer tap, and it's just, you know, one outlet with a mix.
But in your home, you would. But if you look at pubs and old restaurants and old buildings, they still tend to have.
It depends, though.
Depends if they've renovated recently.
A lot of, going back to like pubs and stuff, a lot of those places now have what's called concussive taps, and that's just like, you know, the one where you push it down, you get 10 seconds and it goes off.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's a mixer tap. It's not hot or cold. So
it depends.
It depends, but yeah.
But I'm guessing what he's trying to say is that you don't see those in America at all.
Oh, what, one or the other? Yeah, probably it's just all probably combined, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see.
Sinks don't have that sort of food waste disposal thing that you press the button and it does the noise.
Yeah.
Oh, is that in a sink?
That was one of the best things I
blitzed?
discovered after I didn't discover it. Somebody else came up with the idea and I just used it. But it's amazing. It's just so pleasing to know that all of that gunk gets broken down, and just don't put your hamster in there. I've learned that lesson from someone else. I didn't do it, just read about it on Reddit. Letterboxes. Firstly, Americans don't call them letterboxes, but mailboxes, and typically don't have them on the door, but outside in the garden, yard. The garden/yard is different, often smaller in Britain, but very well kept up, depending on the family. And just massive yards here with, you know, mesh fences and things like that, or picket fences. Back inside, a lot of properties in the United States will have walk-in closets that are built into the actual walls of the house, whereas in Britain you bring your own closet/wardrobe to put your clothes in, and that takes up more space, I've just realised. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot every step of the way, except when it comes to washing machines and dryers. How cool is this? We combine them both into one giant cube, whereas America has two separate cubes. And tea drinkers that we are, we love our kettles, don't we? But they're not just any kettles. These are ones you plug in and then hit the switch to turn on the plug, because I forgot to mention that our plug sockets also have switches. And then, you know, you turn it on, don't need a stovetop, and it heats up. Just like that. You've got your water, Bob's your uncle, pour it into a mug, there's your cup of tea.
So do they have the kettles only on the stove then?
They don't have kettles. They use a pot to boil water.
For real? Really?
Well, obviously some people have kettles.
Yeah.
But as a general rule, or like on average, I would say kettle is not necessarily the first thing they would think to purchase.
I suppose they don't drink as much tea as us, right?
Yeah.
So
and for coffee, I guess you have coffee machines.
And yeah. Okay, it makes a lot more sense then, actually.
Tea is just a us thing.
It's good though.
A kettle is so easy though.
It is good. It's really easy. It's just pour water in,
60
flick,
seconds,
away,
boiled, done.
Yeah, it's
By
really
the time
good
you put your tea in the cup and your sugar.
Well, it's
and
not just for tea though. If you're doing, you know, if you're cooking on the stove, it's so much easier just to pour boiling water in rather than having to wait for it to boil. Yeah, interesting.
In America, you do have the stovetop kettles, and part of me likes that because it does this really pleasing whistling sound at the end. Now, if you were paying attention...
Oh, sorry, I know what
That's
he means
what I was
now.
talking about.
Sorry, yeah, I just didn't realise. So the one that you see in films sometimes where... I can't like those,
can't whistle because my voice too croaky.
That was quite good.
It won't actually, it won't physically...
It won't go high-pitched enough. I see what he means now, the stove top. Actual kettles,
Attention, during that list, you may have noticed that I touched on some of the terminological differences when it comes to housing in either country. And that brings us on to our final entry.
The words.
It wouldn't be Britain and America if they weren't two countries separated by a common language, and the same is true of the housing world. So let's finish with a rapid fire round looking at those very words. So here in Chicago, I live in a flat, except in America they don't call it flat, it's called an apartment. Something else that you'll find in America though are these condominiums or condos, if you don't fancy saying a word that has condom in it. And we do have those in Britain. They're usually called common hold properties, and I suppose most British people wouldn't go around using that term, whereas you actually hear the term condo quite a lot. It's been suggested to me that I move into a condo, and it sounds good. I mean, when I first heard the term, I thought it sounded like I might be moving onto a lakeside boat or something like that. It is like an apartment, but it's one you would buy. It's real estate. Now, as a child and young adult, I grew up in a house that was known as a semi-detached house. That's when you have a house adjoined to one other house on one side, but not on the other side. In the United States, this is known quite simply as a duplex, which is not a wrestling move. If it is joined on both sides with another house, then you are part of a line of houses that are known as terraced houses in Britain. In America, they're known as row houses because they're all in a row, presumably. Then there's council housing in Britain versus the projects in the United States, and that's just another way of saying public housing. To control the electricity flow in Britain, you have the mains power. In America, you have the grid power. And what if you're sick and tired of the place that you're living in and you just want to relocate somewhere else? In America, you would just simply move. In Britain, you'd move house. And on that note, I'm going to move out to my outro transition because this is the end of the video. Let me know in the comments below if you're watching this from your house right now, or just if you're not. Leave a comment either way. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that my videos don't get lost in the pond. A big reminder, by the way, if you want to keep up with me on a day-to-day basis and just see some of the stupid trivia that I come out with, follow me on Twitter at LostInThePondUS. You won't regret it.
Video, isn't it? So, American and English houses, some differences. So
some things that we expected and I personally knew about.
Yeah, so I think we kind of knew about America's timber. Well, he didn't specify that so much, but you get a lot more for your money in America, it seems. Especially, it was nearly like the average house in the UK was what, 900 square feet?
Yeah.
And I think it was
1,600.
16. That's a lot.
That's a big difference.
But it's not that far off being double. But yeah, man, that's crazy. Actually, can we just have double the size of the house? You know what I mean? That'd be amazing.
I think one thing he didn't touch on when he talked about the washing machine situation, dryer, whatever. I think what I know is that a lot of the American houses have a separate sort of laundry room.
Yeah.
Where you would have your washing machine, your dryer, and all of that. Whereas that's not necessarily something that's common here.
Here, it's just you normally have your washer just in the kitchen, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, amongst everything else.
Yeah.
What you mean is they have like a utility room.
A utility room,
but I suppose,
it's a designated small room where you do your laundry.
But I think that goes hand in hand with having that bigger property size.
Yeah.
You've just got that extra room to chuck those bits like that in because. You know,
which makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, it kind of.
I wish we would have that as a
standard
feature.
Yeah, just imagine you've got everything in one place rather than you know I've got to go into the kitchen to do my washing where I'm cooking my dinner and having a cup of tea and everything's in the same.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't have ours in our kitchen, but it's a very standard thing.
No, we've just kind of chucked ours in the garage, haven't we? So we do kind of have a utility bit, but it's just an inconvenient utility area, isn't it? Like we have to leave the house to do our washing to come back in again.
And I've also heard that the combination of washer dryer is actually not necessarily as good as having a separate.
No, I mean
dryer.
I'm a big fan of having both, to be honest. And not just that, I can also wash things. And dry things, so I can be doing double the loads at once.
Yeah.
Plugs. I mean, we kind of knew the plugs were different.
I know. I have seen a video on plugs.
Well, if I remember American plugs, if I remember how they are, it's like two prongs, like they're like the European, but they're flat, like so they're kind of like that.
Yeah, like skinny.
But what I've always found with those types of plugs, even the European plugs, where it's just the two prongs. I know some Europeans have like a rounded mould where it kind of does push in, but it's not always the case.
Yeah.
But I find
very easy to. They come out.
It's they're very kind of wobbly and they don't feel that safe. Whereas I know with the British plug, like once it's in, is in. Like it takes a bit of pulling to get it out.
Yes, it does. And the video I watched on actual the way they're constructed and like the safety features of a British plug, like it's crazy. It's like, so these little things that they thought of, how to install, how to even put the wires in, it just makes it so safe. And it's like, that's so simple and so brilliant at the same time.
Yeah, but normally
you don't really think about it, it's just a plug.
You don't, right? But normally a lot of these things happen, and you know, if you think about anything, right? If you look at construction, right, you would have a guy up a ladder 2 stories high, right?
Yeah.
With no straps or anything. And that's fine until he falls off. And the minute he falls off, someone's like, oh, actually, that's a bit of a bad idea. Maybe we should, you know, and then they start bringing in all the health and safety.
Right, so what you're saying is at some point...
Someone's probably been licking a plug, being like, oh, what's that doing? And then bloody hell, now we've got to do something.
Do all these...
Oh, I got excited.
All these safety things.
But generally, though, I mean, I don't know if that's in other countries as well, but in England specifically, like, the minute health and safety is crazy, it's because some idiot has been like, I wonder what if I just lick my finger and touch that plug socket, I wonder what happens. And
yeah, or it's the same principle as you see a sign that is so outrageous, like you think, that's so dumb, like of course that's the case, why would you even have to put in a sign? And obviously it's because someone at some point has done the exact stupid thing and they had to put a sign up.
Yeah, so and it is quite funny when you, I mean obviously maybe the story behind it isn't, but some of these things are funny, and we notice that actually with Airbnb, don't we? Airbnb is like, I don't know, do they have that in America? Probably not.
Yeah, I think so.
So with Airbnb, you know, like where you can just rent someone's room or house or whatever the case may be, but they do have some really quirky rules, don't they? It's like, oh, and while you're here, please don't abuse the laundry rooms and only use XYZ.
Or between these and these hours, you can't use the washing machine. Or
actually, the one we went to was about the washing machine. Yeah. It's like, please only do like 1 or 2 loads
per stay.
So someone's obviously gone there with just like
their whole car,
like, and washed everything. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, that was funny.
But yeah, I think we're going well off. We're just getting carried away. Sorry, guys.
That was
but yeah,
good. I guess some expected things.
Yeah, some expected, some
not as unexpected.
I don't think anything was unexpected.
Yeah,
specifically,
nothing was
but
a massive shock or a surprise.
Yeah,
it's just good to see all like.
I think I would like to see, now knowing obviously how much bigger American property is compared to the UK. It'd be nice to see like, what can you get for your money?
What does it look like?
Yeah, like so how much would you get for say $500,000 or pounds or whatever? Probably dollars, because we're not ever going to afford £500,000. But like, it would be quite nice to just see the variation of like what.
Yeah, maybe we'll look into.
Yeah, I think that'd be a cool one to see.
More, what you can get for your money, kind of.
And
thing.
Obviously around the country as well, because I'm assuming you know certain parts of America are cheaper than others, much like in the UK.
Yeah,
and that'd be quite a cool one to look into.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you guys actually have any recommendations for any videos like that, it'd be really cool.
Yeah, let us know in the comments, and we'll check them out.
But yeah, I think that concludes this video, guys. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye
guys.